welcome to this edition of the Consultation, Just the Tips with Bob Simon. And I am honored to have a fellow Justice Team member, Ashley Kim, here. And Ashley does a lot of sex abuse cases and cases of the kind at schools and things and public entities. So first, Ashley, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I know I've been with the Justice Team now for a few months, and I'm just really excited to see where we can go in regards to sex abuse and things like that.
Yeah, and I know that's something you're passionate about. We brought you on. You're working on that at another firm, so you have certainly more experience than I do in these. So this is why I'm going to role play the client.
Okay.
My name is going to be Hank in this
All right,
episode,
Hank.
and we're going to start this way. Okay. I'm walking into your office now. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Hi, Attorney Kim. My name is Hank, and I'm here because, unfortunately, my daughter at her high school. Well, there's kind of two separate issues, but one, there's a teacher that's doing, I think, very inappropriate things, and I kind of need your advice of what to do. And then they had found like a creeper cam, for lack of a better term, and the girls' locker room, when they have a pool and there's a changing room for lockers, and they found a camera there, and I don't know if my daughter's on it at this time. They arrested the teachers, two separate incidences, but first, just so you understand, like my kid's a student. She's like 14 years old. They have this messaging platform, like where the students can talk to the teachers. I got a hold of my daughter's phone. She showed me that the teacher was saying stuff like, "You're very beautiful. You don't act your age. You act older than you are," and just very. It seems like grooming stuff to me, and I immediately reported to the school, and she told me that he's rubbed up on her inappropriately before, touched her thigh, said it was accidental, and I need to know what to do because we need to shut this down before I go and just put a beating on this guy.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Hank, I just want to say I'm really sorry that this has happened, and this must have taken a toll on both your family, your daughter as well. So that's a lot to have to deal with, especially when it's involving something like a school and a teacher. That's a place where you send your child and expecting them to be in a safe environment. And so I just want to say, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear that this is happening. In regards to, I know you had mentioned it's two separate issues, so I want to start first with the camera incident that you mentioned. Can you let me know a little bit more about that? So my understanding is that a camera may have been found in the locker room.
Yeah.
And as far as your understanding goes, it's just the girls' locker room. And do you have any idea of how long the camera may
So
have
this
been
is
for?
what I don't know right now because police came. We got an email from the school saying that this happened. I think they're investigating. They don't like my daughter plays water polo, like she uses that, like I would assume in that area. But I don't know. Like I don't know if she's on it. We don't know what to do. We don't know if we have to wait for the police to say that she's on it to do something. But I know me and the other parents are very, very concerned. Very concerned.
Yeah, definitely. And in situations like this, what could potentially happen is that it's more likely than not that it's not just your daughter. If this video has been placed in the girls' locker room, it could have captured her, and it could have captured other individuals as well. So typically, when it comes to these types of cases, what could happen is that there is going to be different categories of exposure. And so, for example, I know right now you just mentioned that at the moment you don't have any idea whether your daughter is exposed, but the stress that comes with not knowing as well is one thing. And so there's categories of exposure. So for example, if there is a confirmed exposure, the police, upon the review of the video footage, can determine that, hey, you know what, this is your daughter, and unfortunately certain things were exposed.
And so that we don't get that call.
Yeah, definitely not. But that is, one category of exposure. Another category could be that she's captured. it might not necessarily be that certain body parts are exposed. However, she is captured regardless in the locker room, invasion of privacy, or somewhere she's supposed to be safe. That's another category. Another category is that maybe the specific footage and the tapes that the police are reviewing didn't capture your daughter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't exist, right? Like it could be that there were various tapes that whoever installed the cameras could have, and they were deleted or whatever happened, and we might not necessarily have those footages at the moment. And so there's still a category of just potential exposure, and that it just can't be confirmed one way or the other. But depending on what we learn and what we find out, your daughter may be placed into what the attorneys, what we would categorize at different exposures. And then depending on where she kind of falls into that, that would depend on what happens further on in the case, whether it be through a demand or litigation.
And one of the concerns that other parents have raised, and I don't really care about this because I'm kind of pissed, but they're like, well, you're taking money from the school, they won't be able to afford the basketball team, and you're blah 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 blah, you're going to bankrupt the school. Like, what should I tell these folks?
First of all, I think it's really, and I know that hearing that question, it makes me go, oh, like, what does that matter, right? Given what happened. But I think the more calm way to answer that kind of question is that schools, a lot of public schools, are going to have insurance for these kinds of things. They're going to have money set aside for these kinds of things. Unfortunately, incidents like this is not new when it comes to schools. And that's a really sucky part of, why we're doing what we're doing. But this isn't new. And so schools should have or do have insurance money or things in place to address these types of concerns.
Now, my daughter, she goes to a public school. Does it matter if it's public or if she went to the Catholic school? Does it play a difference at all?
Yeah, it does play a difference. When it comes to public schools, they're considered government entities. So in California, there's something called a government tort claim that a claimant must file before they could move forward with litigation. It gets a little tricky when it comes into this arena that we're dealing with right now. When it comes to childhood sex abuse, that is an exception to a government tort claim. However, the allegations that we're talking about right now, where it's recording a camera incident, that's not necessarily, as far as what we know, there's no touching that's been involved, so we don't know exactly if it falls into that exception or not. However, in an abundance of caution, it's really important to file that government claim if you can, and to just, in order to preserve the claim.
So is that like a lawsuit? What is this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A government tort claim is not a lawsuit. Okay. So you can file a government tort claim to preserve the chance, to preserve you being able to file a lawsuit down the line, if you want. But you filing a government tort claim does not necessarily mean that you have to file litigation.
Yeah, and that's one of my concerns. Is like I'm pissed as all hell, but I don't know if what if my daughter says, okay, we should file this as abundance of caution. But if she's like, I just don't want to go through this lawsuit, like, what's it look like for her, for either of these? Like, does she have to testify? What goes on with that? Is her name going to be public record?
Yeah, so in regards to her name being public record, first of all, since she's a minor, what happens is that when you file things like a government tort claim or you file a lawsuit, minors are protected. Oh. Their names and their identities are protected. So what would most likely happen is that we would file with just her first and last initial. However, because she's a minor, we would need a guardian to file on her behalf. So, for example, if you would be the guardian, Hank, it would be the first and last initials of your daughter's name, and then it's going to be guardian ad litem Hank, and then your last name. And so, when it comes down the line for things that actually need to be signed or things like that, it will all be the guardian who's doing that.
So it'd be like, so my last name is Ankerchief, so it would be what?
It would be your daughter's first and last initial, and it goes by and through her guardian ad litem handkerchief.
Wow, there we go. There we go.
And I know you asked a little while ago whether she would have to testify and what happens and kind of what that process looks like. I'm going to be honest with you, Hank. Litigation is not easy. Litigation, it can take a toll on the person, involved in it. However, it could also provide a lot of benefits, right? And that's why we go through these types of things. Sometimes unwillingly, a lot of the times you don't want to be involved as much, but it's really important that if you decide to move forward with the litigation, that you be involved as much as possible. If things are, for example, your daughter doesn't, she's not in the mindset to talk about this, or she's not in, she just doesn't want to deal with this. Something that I would recommend for parents is, note the behavioral changes that's happening with your daughter. Sometimes, these again are minor children.
Yeah, she just says she wants to be normal, right? Yeah. She doesn't want to be targeted by anybody, or she don't want to be teacher's pet. They're literally calling her the teacher's pet because they heard about the incident that, because I probably said a lot too of what her teacher did, and I don't know, just.
Yeah, I think it's like I said earlier, it's unfortunate, but I think it's also her knowing that she's not alone in this, right? This has happened, unfortunately, to a lot of other people, and to just know that her voice is not hers alone. It's going to be her, and it's also going to be you, working with her and helping her through this, and it's also going to be her attorneys listening to her.
Yeah, and we have, so the other parents, since we've heard about the camera thing, is we formed like a Facebook group. A lot of us are in there. Is this something where you could represent all of the potential kids that were in there? Is that a class action? How does that kind of work for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So typically when it comes to this, what I would like to explain is this is more so in the mass action field. And what that means is the difference between a class action and a mass action is that a class action, for example, an injury occurs and everyone gets the same damages, right? Everyone gets the same, monetary relief. Whereas in mass action, the damage or the injury that occurred to you, it might be all different, right? So that's what I was explaining earlier about the different exposures. So for example, if she's in the confirmed exposed camp where it's even confirmed that certain body parts are exposed, that's going to be a different, she's going to end up with a different damage amount because of the injury is just different, right? Compared to if, we know that she used the locker rooms, but just based on the videos that we have now, we're not able to identify her. That's just a different, and so when it comes to different relief, that goes into the mass action camp. So definitely we are able to represent the other parents and the other students involved. So it just goes into a complex litigation arena, and a lot of that is important for the child and the parent to get kind of involved early on, just because, when it comes down to, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, just what happened is not as fresh, and, what you're going through, it might not be as fresh. So it's really important, if you're going to be involved, to try to get involved early on.
Yeah. And so does it benefit if all the parents do come together? Does it help us save costs too? If we're all doing a lawsuit together?
Yeah, it would definitely help save costs. And if you think about it like this, so say that, Hank, you file a lawsuit for your daughter, right, in regards to what happened, and all these other parents also file separate. Let's just assume that we're filing separately. If that happens, what a lot of the time is the courts are going to recognize, hey, this actually looks like it's the same fact pattern, it's involving the same people, and then it gets categorized into a mass. The reason why that's good is that when it comes to a mass case, the individual people that are, for example, deposed, so the teacher, he's not going to have to be deposed in 50 separate lawsuits that are, raking up costs 50 different times. It's going to be one. And that one then deposition is that cost is going to be split in between all of the different claimants. And so it does save costs to go into a mass route. It also, the thing with when it comes to a mass litigation versus an individual litigation is that what can also happen is instead of the other side sending you a bunch, like 150 questions that you have to answer, and things like that, what could happen is that there's a designated questionnaire where, you're asked to answer certain things and everyone gets the same questionnaire, and you have, that's, how you respond to questions instead of possibly having to go through like a deposition testimony where you're seated and you're.
But does it have to go that far? This seems pretty straightforward. Like, why would this school want to pursue this? I mean, I feel like my daughter can get justice. They can shut this down. Like, what are the next steps? Could we resolve this sooner than later, or do we have to go all the way to trial like this?
Yeah. So when it comes to a lawsuit, there is a potential that it can settle at any time.
Okay.
That can always happen. However, if for whatever reason, for example, the school is set like, hey, we didn't do anything wrong at all. There's nothing that we did that could implicate us in this litigation. They might want to fight it all the way. If it comes to that, our firm is a trial firm. That is the currency that matters when it comes to litigation, whether you can take a case to trial. And so if it comes to that, we're more than happy to take that on, and we will. And other firms know that we go to trial and we win.
And what about, like, is there a potential that we could resolve this without having to file a lawsuit?
Yeah, so that's another great question. So how I like to kind of explain it is that we could think about it in, two steps. There's going to be a pre-litigation demand. And what that is before there's any lawsuit that's filed with the court, we contact the school district or the school, and we pretty much say, hey, we represent all of these people. This is why we think you're liable. And this is what, how each of these students are doing. We're giving you an opportunity now to settle with us for X amount of money. And of course, we'll make sure and confirm with each one of you, each of the parents before we make that type of demand, that's an amount that they would be okay with. Once we make that demand, the ball is, in the school district's court to decide whether they want to move forward with settling the case. Before a lawsuit is filed, however, something to keep in mind is that the school district has no actual obligation to answer or to provide any documents to us or things like that. However, if they decide, what, we're not going to go through with the demand, let's, you guys can move forward. Once we file something in the court, that is going to give us so much power through subpoenas, through requests, things where we're going to be able to start nitpicking and tackling all these different issues that they most likely don't want to be liable for. And so there's a possibility that, they might want to settle, especially given the magnitude of what's going on, that they might want to settle. We don't know that for a fact, but it's always good to at least put that forward.
And then what about, I think my daughter's fear is having to do this deposition where she has to talk, a lawyer ask her, grill her questions and stuff. Is there a way for us to do the lawsuit thing so we can get these documents and she may not have to do that deposition? Is that a possibility?
That is a possibility, especially if it is filed under a mass action case. If it's filed a mass action and there are a lot of students involved, it's more likely than not that all of these students are not going to be deposed. Can
we get these documents early that they have to give to us, and that maybe helps us be able to settle so she doesn't have to do that?
Yeah, that's definitely.
Oh, well, so I could settle the case not just before the lawsuit, but at any time after?
Settle the case anytime after
the lawsuit?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So the day after you file a complaint with the court and it gets served onto the school district, you could even file that day. I mean, you could even settle that day. It can come at any point. So I think it's really important that when you're involved in these types of cases is to early on get as much documents as you can from them, start going through everything and trying to really find these nuggets. If we're able to find these nuggets so that we can settle early on if possible, especially when it involves, younger claimants, younger children, litigation. It can, go on for a little, go on. And so I think it's important to try to at least resolve these types of cases as soon as possible.
Wow. And then, we don't know how long the school had these cameras here. One of my other daughter, she's 19. But if they had it there long enough, is there a potential for her too? I don't know how, maybe they had it for years. We just don't know right now.
Yeah, definitely. And so,
But she's over 18. How does that change things for her?
Yeah, she's over 18. However, if for example, these cameras were installed during the time that she was attending the school, then she was a minor during that time. And so what happens is that when it comes to childhood sexual assault or sexual abuse, well, first of all, there's something called the statute of limitations that happens with any sort of injury. And pretty much what that is a timeline that you have to file a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. When it comes to childhood sexual assault or childhood abuse, that, again, we're in the middle of a debate about whether camera incidents such as this fall under that category. However, say that we're just talking off of the childhood sexual assault or abuse. The statute of limitations for that is until the individual reaches the age of 40 years old. Mm-hmm. So it is a while. Wow. However, like I said earlier, it's really important if, once you figure this out or once, you realize that this may have happened, to file as soon as possible. And also, so there's two ways. You could either file it by the time, you reach 40 years old, or if you're over 18 years old, you have to file within 5 years of learning that your psychological injury was caused by the assault. Wow, okay. So now that she is 19 years old and say that we know that there's a potential that she was caught on these cameras, if it falls under childhood sexual assault or abuse, she has 5 years from her learning at 19 years old that, she may have been abused.
So my last question for you, Attorney Kim, is how I can't afford a lawyer. How do we pay you?
Yeah, so our firm, what we are is we're a contingency-based firm. And so what that means is that you don't pay anything unless we win something for you.
And how about all those costs that we talked about?
Yeah, so there's costs in filing a lawsuit or in even doing a demand. Things like, for example, filing a lawsuit, there's cost that is associated with that. Serving or mailing out something, there's costs associated with that. But what happens is once we're able to get some sort of settlement or verdict amount for you, what would happen is that we would minus those costs in the back end. So let's just say
your firm would just front those costs, so we don't have to pay that up front either?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so literally when I mean you don't pay a thing unless we win something for you or we get something for you, I mean that. Like, you do not pay a thing until we're able to resolve the issue for you. And then based on that, we minus the cost that we, fronted on our end, and we minus the attorney's fees that, that we have for these types of cases. And then whatever is left is everything that you take.
Wow. Well, thank you, Attorney Kim. The Ankerchief family is very satisfied with your consultation here today. Thank you.
Of course. I'm really happy that, you came in. And again, I'm really sorry that this happened. And definitely, let me know how we can be of help for you. And we want to just make sure that you guys are taken care of.
Well, thank you. All right. Stepping out of handkerchiefs shoes here. Ashley, thank you. That was good. And, if you have any questions, go to justicesteamnetwork.com. If you have questions about these types of cases or want to reach Attorney Kim or anybody else, please go there. And thank you for listening to this episode of The Consultation, Just the Tips with Bob Simon. Thanks, you, Ashley.
Everyone.